This morning, the nation bracing for a verdict in the murder trial of Derek Chauvin. You're looking there live at the courthouse where closing arguments were made on Monday. The National Guard deployed in Minneapolis and the governor declaring a state of emergency in anticipation of a verdict.
Now, the fate of the former police officer charged with killing George Floyd is in the hands of 12 jurors. The jury in this case is 5 men, 7 women, ranging in age. We begin with Alex Perez there in Minneapolis again with the very latest. Good morning, Alex.
Hey, good morning, Robin. We expected closing arguments would go about 2 hours. Instead, they went about 6 hours, both sides using every second to try to convince the jury.
Overnight, hundreds of protesters taking to the streets surrounding the courthouse demanding justice for George Floyd. Officials here and across the country bracing for more. This morning, jurors in the trial of Derek Chauvin beginning their second day of deliberations.
His name was George Perry Floyd, Jr.
After hearing more than 6 hours of closing arguments, prosecutors describing George Floyd's anguish as Chauvin pinned him to the pavement.
For 9 minutes and 29 seconds, the defendants wait on him, desperately crying out. A grown man crying out for his mother.
Prosecutors arguing Chauvin used unreasonable force and failed to render aid despite the crowd of bystanders pleading for him to get off of Floyd.
He was not going to let these bystanders tell him what to do. He was going to do what he wanted, how he wanted, for as long as he wanted.
When his attorney began closing arguments, Chauvin removing his mask as he faced the jury.
Mr. Chauvin should be found not guilty of all counts.
The defense replaying several body cam videos arguing Chauvin's actions were reasonable based on what he knew about the officer's struggle with Floyd before he arrived on the scene.
And a reasonable police officer would consider whether to use an additional force to overcome the suspect's level of resistance.
The defense calling Floyd's death tragic, but also arguing Chauvin did what he was trained to do and telling the jury Floyd's death was caused by a fentanyl overdose and untreated heart problems.
The failure of the state's experts to acknowledge any possibility at all, that any of these other factors in any way contributed to Mr. Floyd's death defies medical science, and it defies common sense and reason.
Prosecutor Jerry Blackwell, the last attorney to address the jury, urging them to use common sense.
You were told, for example, that Mr. Floyd died because his heart was too big. You heard that testimony. And now, having seen all the evidence, having heard all the evidence, you know the truth. And the truth of the matter is that the reason George Floyd is dead is because Mr. Chauvin's heart was too small.
And another moment in court getting a lot of attention when the defense called for a mistrial because Congresswoman Maxine Waters publicly said that protesters should be more confrontational if Chauvin is not found guilty. The judge denying that motion, but facing a lot of criticism for saying from the bench that Waters' words don't matter.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.